Forgotten Realms, Heroes of Faerun and Adventures of Faerun. Do you need these? Are they any good? Is Heroes of Faerun the Xanathar's Guide to Everything of 2024 Dungeons & Dragons? No, but let's talk about them. Hello everybody, if you're new here, I am a Forgotten Realms lore person, and I really do enjoy the realm, so I was very, very excited for these books when they came out, and I want to give you my thoughts on them. There are a lot of things that I really, really enjoy about both of these books, and a lot of things that I don't necessarily think are that important. So first of all, Heroes of Faerun. So this is a player-centric book. It's got magic items, it's got feats, it's got new subclasses, and I feel like both with the Eberron book coming out and this one, I'm finally figuring out how the origin feats are going to work with specific campaign settings. So if I want to be part of a particular faction, which is kind of like the point of playing in the realms, you're going to pick a side, there are starting feats that tie into your background. And I really like that. You can have a feat that gives you a Cult of the Dragon status, and so whether you want to expand upon that in the game later on is up to you, because you have this feat, it gives you a connection to something specific in the campaign setting, and I really like that. There are also other feats that give you access to Spellfire, which is a very Forgotten Realms, Mystra goddess of magic type of thing. And so there is just a lot of cool stuff in here that feels very Forgotten Realmsy, and I like that. Very detailed things about the gods in here, so if you want to pick a god, you can have a lot of information on that god, and it will carry you further. There's also some fun stuff about magic items in here, and mounts and things like that, and there are prices for those, which is something I think we saw in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. That is kind of cool. So you can have this money, you can go out and do things like that, and it's really fun. There's also a renown system, so if you want to move up in the ranks of the Cult of the Dragon, if you want to move up and work for the Emerald Enclave and get renown for that, or even renown for certain areas, that can translate into getting favors, it can translate into getting magic items, and that's cool. Like, I think that's fun. A lot of the stuff that was in 2014 Dungeons & Dragons that they kind of experimented with in different books have come to fruition in this book. The renown system is here. Bastions, they're also part of this and uses the Dungeon Master's Guide. And extra spells and extra feats and things like that that will expand upon your character and make them tied to the realms. If you want a more in-depth view of this, I know that Nerd Immersion has gone over like all of the different classes and stuff, and I will put his video in the description so you can check it out. He does a really good job of kind of covering all of those. Another fun thing about this is that there is something called circle magic, and circle magic is when you have more than one spellcaster all focusing together, all using their magic action at once to create a bigger spell effect. And there are spells that are specifically for circle magic. They can't be cast without that. And there are so many times within the Forgotten Realms that magic just blows up and gets really, really big. We have these mythals, we have all this other stuff. The elves created Evermeet. Like, a lot of these things it's never explained how, and I kind of like that it is now, where you can do a lot if you have enough spellcasters to create or to channel their magic into a spell and basically have a big conclave of wizards and stuff can happen. Now, that's the player-facing book. This is Adventures in Faerun, the DM-facing book, which has more information on the geography and has some plot hooks and things like that, as well as a bunch of like one-page dungeons. And this is the book specifically that Ben from Questing Beast did a review on. He was very critical about this, and I think we should be very critical about all of our RPG products, but especially ones from Wizards of the Coast, because they are the most financially successful version of tabletop RPGs, and with that financial success and brand recognition, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on what comes out of that production team. But also, that production team changes over and over and over, and we're not seeing retention of a singular vision. It's not like I I guess Matt Colville is a perfect example where it's like, I want to make a game, I want to make a setting, I'm going to have them work together. My core team of people has not changed a whole bunch, and we're all very invested in this, and they come out with Draw Steel, and it's awesome. That versus Wizards of the Coast, where they're going to hire off little writers here and there, and have them write sections of a book, and then somebody's going to put it together, and that's going to go to a committee, and the committee's going to decide, no, we don't like that, we think it'll sell better if you do this, blah, 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 blah. That in the end, that is the problem with Dungeons & Dragons. So one of Ben's criticisms was that you can't have design hinge on the success of a roll. If they have to succeed to like notice something in order for the adventure to happen, they should just succeed. And I agree that if you don't want to like be like, okay, everybody roll and you all failed, I guess we don't go on an adventure now. And although that is present in a few adventures within this book, one of these one-page adventures, we're also utilizing 5e's mechanics. Am I writing an adventure that's utilizing D&D 5th edition's mechanics of perception checks and things like that? So let's not be so harsh on some of these adventure writers when they're actively using the system that they're working on to generate an adventure. And if you have 4 or 5 players at your table and you ask them all to make a perception check, there are very good odds that one of them will succeed, and I would say that that player will feel proud of themselves, or special in some way, I guess is a better word, for having noticed the thing, and they can interact with it. Hey guys, I saw that there's a door over here, come check it out with me. From Ben's video, it makes me think that he's more upset with Dungeons & Dragons game design as opposed to saying that this is poor game design. And there was a lot of in this book where he was saying, I want to buy a book that will provide more things for me than I can come up with myself.
When it comes to D&D adventures, I feel like the absolute bare minimum is that if I'm paying for a book, it should at least be better than what I can come up with on the fly. And most of these do not meet that level.
And that's true. If I buy a campaign setting, if I buy a lot of stuff, I don't want to put in a whole ton of work. I want you to bring the work here and provide me steps that are fun to come up with a world or an adventure by myself. And I feel like those one-page adventures do that. And they're very clear at the top for that. So this adventure is for 4th level players, and it is centered around this region, or it's centered around this particular god. So if one of my players is actively worshiping Shantia, then I can go to this place and say, hey, there's a Shantia adventure you have right here. For me, that's useful. If I'm running something specifically in the realms, I like that. All of these resources to actively put my players and tie them directly into the story. And maybe I just need a one-page dungeon for the night, and there I have it. Another one of his criticisms is that there are all these OSR one-page dungeons that do it way better than this. And I agree, if you take the best one-page dungeons from the OSR and compare them to this book, I think the best one-page dungeons from the OSR are going to win. I don't necessarily think these are the best ever. Can I get use out of them, and do they tie back into the setting that I'm actively trying to role play in? Yes. Now, if you want to run a Forgotten Realms game, I think that this is the best jumping in point. There's a lot of information here. There's also older versions that we could get into. The 3rd edition Forgotten Realms campaign guide is widely thought of as the best. I still think the 4th edition one is very good too, because it, similar to this, is, oh, you want to go to this area, here are some adventure hooks for that area. For this one specifically though, aside from the one-page dungeons, there's a lot of information on each region and what's going on there currently and what has happened there previously. And on top of that, they divide up this whole thing into specific regions. Like we have the Heartlands, we have the Sword Coast, the Lands of Intrigue, the North, and each of these regions has a different feel. So if you want to run kind of a scary, cold region survival horror aspect, well, Icewind Dale is right up there, and oh look, we have an adventure that could tie in if your players like that. Do you want super heroic stuff? Well, the Sword Coast is right there and we can do that. Do you want to interact with genies and survive in the desert and all these other things? Well, Calimshan is down below, and here's how to have a whole bunch of adventures for that. I think This book is very good. Like, I would find a lot of use out of this and the player's guide if I was running a Forgotten Realms-centric campaign. I did a YouTube short, a TikTok, where I kind of said, hey, I think these could have been 2 books. And the only reason I say that is because there is some information in here on the gods, and there are some information in here like you have information on the gods in both of these books. It's kind of redundant information. And you also could have adjusted some of the art to allow this to be under a certain page count, so it could be 1 book. I think this is a test to see, can we sell player-facing books? I also think that the player-facing book for Eberron is a similar thing, and maybe we'll get another Eberron book for 2025 later on. And the price is big, like $50 for each book. You're looking at $100 to get both of these. And I don't know if that's necessarily worth it for you. I don't know if your players at the table could buy the 1 book and you could buy the other. But if you're like me, if I bought just Adventures in Faerun, I would want the full set and I want to get the other one. I do think $100 is a lot of money, but I think that this is a book that could last you years upon years of adventures running around in the realms. If you're going to do maybe like a 5-session realms jaunt through Kalimshan, this might not be the best for you. And go pick up one of the excellent 2nd edition PDFs. But if you are running a long-term campaign in the realms, if you like this, then pick it up. I also just want to talk about what I really liked about this and what I really didn't like about this. I like that there are adventure hooks for all of the specific regions and the information that's going on there. I like that there's up-to-date history on the realms. There was some stuff in the Icewind Dale chapter that I didn't realize had direct ramifications from Rime of the Frost Maiden. I really like the factions, and I like how you can incorporate them into the game. And I also really like the opening chapter of Adventures in Faerun teaches the Dungeon Master what should a Forgotten Realms game feel like. And that's something I think we don't really talk about because it's just kind of this fantasy kitchen sink, anything can happen, but it really focuses on making characters that are heroic for heroic fantasy. You should be the prince of this kingdom that's gone off on a quest. You are important to the realms. You shouldn't just be like a random orphan on the street unless it turns out that your father is King Oberon of the Feywild. Like there's a reason that you are an adventurer because you're special, you're powerful, you're unique, and you have the tools and the ability to save the world. You should do that. It also addresses some problems with the realm. Why am I going on an adventure to stop a dragon when we could just call Elminster and he could snap his fingers and do it instantly? Well, you just have a conversation with your players and say, you don't. Like, Elminster, it doesn't matter if he's busy, doesn't matter if you could go get him, this is your adventure. Like, you guys have to take the reins and you're in control of this. How are you gonna solve it? And I really like that. And then finally, the last bit of advice was, what do you do at the table if a player knows more about the Forgotten Realms than you? And this hit home close to me because I had a DM who actively said to me once, Jordan, I will never run a Forgotten Realms game for you because you know too much and that's intimidating for him. And that made me very sad because it's like, here's a thing you love, here's a franchise, here's a world that you just really, really enjoy, and nobody will ever run it for you. How do you combat that? Well, it specifically says if you have that player that's read all the novels, knows all of this, probably knows more about the realms than you do, make them the expert at the table. So we're in Waterdeep this week. Jordan, what's a good pub in Waterdeep? Do you know? Oh my gosh, yes. We should go to this tavern. It's owned by this dwarf. He's really, really friendly, and there's all these other things that we can do. But yeah, I think that would be awesome. Okay, you guys head off to that tavern. I think a lot of DMs think that they're going to start arguing with their player about what is canon and what is not canon, but that shouldn't really matter. And I don't know every player, but I feel like that wouldn't come up as much as you think. And it's really a logical fear that people put on themselves to be like, well, this player knows more about this setting than I do. I don't think I feel comfortable running it for him. It's not a dissimilar problem for when dungeon masters become players and players are scared to run a game for a previous dungeon master because they know the rules a little too well. Just run games, talk to each other, have fun. What do I not like about these books? Although the one-page adventures, I do find them useful, some of them are very lacking in details. And if you are good at improvising, I think you can come up with a lot of stuff on the fly and gravitate to what your players are interested in. But if you don't have that muscle exercise, that improv skill, you might be confused why there are completely empty rooms in this abandoned barn. Although I find the circle magic interesting, I think with some groups it could get a little overpowered, but I haven't tested this. I don't really know. It's the idea that any spellcaster who has the spellcasting ability, even subcasters like paladins and rangers, can contribute to very powerful spells and actually contribute and hold concentration for very, very powerful spells. So I might change it to be that you have to be of the same class to circle spell, so only wizards can circle spell together, or you have to at least know the same spell in order to circle cast together. And that, in my opinion, could make for some interesting party dynamics where you're all warlocks or you're all bards. But who knows? I haven't tested it. It could work just fine. Time will tell. Another thing I don't like is I feel like this book is going to be treated like a Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and we're going to have these player options appear in everything later on. So although circle magic might work really well for this campaign setting, it might not work well for other settings, and if we just start incorporating that into every game, I could see some dungeon masters not liking that. And also some of these very specific spells, like the Spellfire spells, they feel at home in the Forgotten Realms, but would I want to take those Spellfire, like those radiant sorcerer spells, and use them in this other setting, such as Ravenloft or something? That kind of feels out of place, but I could see some players doing that. And we all remember this kind of happened with Strixhaven when there were all these weird spells that came out for the Strixhaven campaign setting, and it broke a lot of other campaigns when people were pulling spells from those. And it's hard for a DM to be like, I don't know what you're looking at on D&D Beyond, I don't want you to use that spell, but it's right here. That's the problem. And I'm afraid that these books might just be considered more subclasses, more options for your character for any game, when it should be, well, this is for a Forgotten Realms game. But maybe I'm just making up problems and your table is completely fine with that. I'm just remembering all of the problems from Strixhaven. It's a lot of material. It actively tells you that there is a wiki. There are online resources to help you if you're interested in running a game in the realms. I think it does a good job of what it sets out to do, which is, here's the history of the realms, here's how to get started in a game in the realms, and here's how to make your character a part of the realms. So for that, I do recommend these. I think they're really awesome. And I'll say this at the end of the video because I forgot to say it at the beginning, but I did buy these with my own money. This was not sent to me by Wizards of the Coast. I just went out to grab the special edition covers because I thought that the art was so, so cool. And in fact, I haven't heard of Wizards of the Coast sending books out to anyone since the shift change of people at the D&D department of Wizards of the Coast. So maybe with that changeover, we're just not going to get promo copies anymore. Who knows? But what do you think? Are you excited for these books? Will you be running a Forgotten Realms game? I could see myself starting with some characters, building this, and then seeing where my party is interested in going, and then taking bits from Storm King's Thunder or Rime of the Frost Maiden and kind of expanding it as they go. These shouldn't be considered a sandbox, but I think with my knowledge, my other books, and my campaign adventures, I could pretty much create some kind of a sandbox where if my players wanted to go in a direction, we could go in a direction and find something to do. So that's it. I like them. Let me know in the comments below if you do, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.